Stand by. This is Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel for SMEs, business owners, and entrepreneurs. Streaming live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. The live show is made possible by our sponsor, Restream, the easy way to stream to multiple social platforms at the same time. Restream Studio makes it simple to go live directly from your browser. Get started now at businessconnectionslive.com/Restream. And now, here's Steve Hyland. Hello there, great to have your company as always. It is Business Connections Live, and we are live right now, globally, around the world. And it's great to have your company. My name's Steve Hyland, and it's good to know that you're with us today. Got a cracking show lined up for you today, an absolute stonker of a program. We thought we would go not just international, but global. Today we're going to be going down to Brisbane in Australia. It's going to be Keith Banfield is going to be my guest on today's program. Keith, it's lovely to have you with us. I can see you sitting there in your back garden at the moment. Now, we had a chat about this a moment ago, and I said to you, okay, it's only going to be green screen. Where did you find the picture from? And you said, no, actually, this is a photograph of my back garden, and it's a nice place to live.
It is quite nice, isn't it? Yeah, you can see. I don't see. I've got the pool behind me, and so yeah, that's why I live here now and not in the UK.
How long have you been over there for? How long ago did you leave?
2004, I first came out here, and so I've been back to the UK several times since. But I really love it here. It's a great spot, and I particularly love the climate, the people, and all the things that go with it. But the UK's got some great things as well, and I miss a lot of the friends that I've got over there.
Well, it's lovely for you to be on the program today, so thank you very much indeed. Today we're going to be talking about lead generation, which seems to be a really important thing when it comes to businesses. We're over here at the moment, and it's been bad where you are too, but COVID has really, really sort of nobbled small businesses over the last couple of months. If there was one quick fix, and we've had a question in from Linda. She said to us today as well, she said, what are the benefits of lead generation to restart the economy post-Brexit and COVID? I mean, it's an interesting place to start because there is so much to talk about and there is so much that needs to be done because businesses are in such a mire at the moment.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you have to then look at which businesses are, especially if you're selling a product or service, you need to look at which businesses are still fairly buoyant and which ones are really struggling, because and maybe to change the market and who you're appealing to. So, for example, travel is pretty much dead in the water, and so if that was your market before, you might need to pivot and go to a different niche. Rather than going to the one that's really struggling.
All right, so let's have a bit of a chat about what we're going to be talking about today, because I think this is very significant. Do you think it's all taken a bit of a back seat over the past couple of months? Do you think, to a certain extent, what's actually happened is that we've taken our finger off the pulse and we're not really getting on with it and doing things as we should be doing? Have we just stopped marketing our businesses?
I think some people have been complacent, and particularly if, obviously different in different countries, but I think each country has had some sort of government handouts to support staff and to cover wages. Over here we've got a program which they call JobKeeper, which was paying $3,000 a month for an employee. And so, of course, if companies were not having to pay for wages, maybe they've taken their finger off the pulse a little bit, but that's going to come to an end at some point. And I think there's a big difference as well between the UK and where I am here, because Queensland's been very fortunate in as much that we've had very limited number of COVID cases, and as a result, we haven't had the same restrictions you've had in terms of doing business. It's been much more open and buoyant. So I haven't felt the effects of that quite as much as perhaps you have in the UK.
Angus has asked here, he says, do you think that lead generation is different from country to country? I mean, you've got your experience out there now in Australia, and you're dealing with businesses out there. But do you think lead generation is just something that is a global way that you do things, or do you think it's right for different market segments?
I think it definitely differs from country to country. But having said that, one of the platforms which I love using for lead generation is Facebook, and social media generally, because it covers all countries, and so it's very easy for me. For example, if I wanted to market to the UK now, I could do that just as easily as I could to Australia, and Facebook has made that possible. Whereas when people were relying on publications and printed media, that made it much more difficult, and much more of a difference between one country and another.
Do you sometimes get a resistance from businesses that you talk to about Facebook? Because I think sometimes people will look at Facebook and they will say, well, look, that's for one particular market segment. Really, where I want to be marketing on LinkedIn, because that's where all the professionals are. Do you think Facebook really is that valuable a resource for people to go out there and use? I mean, I've been doing some research, and from what I see, it seems to me if they're on LinkedIn, they're going to be on Facebook as well.
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, LinkedIn definitely gives you different criteria to be able to search for exactly who you're trying to look for. So, for example, on LinkedIn, if I wanted to find businesses that have got between, I don't know, 10 and 50 employees, I could pinpoint those types of companies. If I wanted to pinpoint managing directors of a particular type of business sector with that number of employees who've had their business for 3 years, I can do that on LinkedIn. You can't do that so readily on Facebook. But what you can do is you can build up connections on LinkedIn, and you can then export that list across into Facebook, and then use that for marketing on Facebook. One of the things I like about Facebook, though, is this: people are addicted to checking their news feeds. Yes. You know, they get their mobile out and they're addicted to going through and checking to see what's in there.
They're sitting there in restaurants, aren't they, with their other halves, and while they're sitting there, they're checking their feeds, aren't they?
Exactly. So if your ad is where they're looking, then that makes a lot of sense. Whereas I think people perhaps don't check LinkedIn quite so readily. There's people on LinkedIn that are very active players, shall I say, on LinkedIn, but I don't think the general business population is as active on LinkedIn as it is on Facebook.
Interesting, because Angus, who's going to be featuring a little bit later on the programme, but he says as well, Facebook is great when used properly. Sadly, most don't use it well. Local business groups on Facebook are vibrant and receptive to chats. I mean, I think that's what's so interesting about Facebook, is it isn't used properly. But then is any social media used well and properly? And is it the small minority of businesses that are using social media to their benefit?
Well, I think it's not just Facebook or social media. I think a lot of things, I don't know everything that Microsoft Word or Microsoft Excel does. I'm sure there's loads of features in there that I'm not using that would be really useful if I knew how to use them. And I think the same with Facebook, because it doesn't normally come with a manual. So it's not like, here's your manual on everything you could possibly do with Facebook. You're picking stuff up as you go along. For that reason, when I'm using Facebook as an advertising medium, I'd normally use an agency or someone like that to do the campaigns for me, because algorithms are changing all the time. But there's lots of things you can do that you might not realize. And I think the agencies are doing it day in, day out, so they know exactly what they're doing.
Do you think the solution that we're talking about here, I mean, the title of the program is to do lead generation on autopilot. Okay, we've got the platforms, we've got the likes of LinkedIn, we've got our Facebooks out there, but is there a lot more technology around what we need to do once we receive a lead when it comes in from somebody? Is it graft, or is it automation and systems that we put in that will make the difference when it comes to what we're doing when we're marketing out there?
It's having a system and a process and a funnel. And I think the mistake that a lot of people make is that they put an ad out, whether it's Facebook, LinkedIn, or whatever it is, and then they they jump straight on that person when they come in, and it's almost like someone saying, you've met someone on a first date, and you say to them, "Look, I really like you. Will you marry me?" The chances of you being successful are very, very remote. And I think so many people do that with their marketing. They jump straight on someone as soon as they get a lead or an inquiry, and they're trying to sell to them. And we see
but is it a case of if you ask enough people, one of them will eventually say yes?
Well, maybe, but you're going to have a load of wastage as well. And what we want to do is to make every single interaction count, so that we've got the best possible chance of success. And I think for that reason, we need a funnel. We need a process so that we can take someone who comes to us as a lead. We can put them through the funnel. And for me, what I want to do is to automate that process as much as possible, because you and I both know you'll get a lot of people that are tire kickers. They're just after a bit of information. They're perhaps not going to do anything right now, and you can waste and spend a lot of time with those people for a reward that might come much further down the track. So we really want to be able to automate that rapport process so that we can then quickly get to the people that want to do business with you now.
It's very interesting, and Angus has been getting involved with the program today, and I've spoken to Angus quite a lot. He tends to not go for the, I hope this is correct, he tends to not go for the mass approach where it's not all numbers. He tends to pick a specific number of clients who have contacted him, and then he will target them directly. So it's a smaller yield of clients, but they are super served effectively by the way he communicates with them, talks to them, finds their pain. Is there something to be said for that approach as well, do you think? Because most funnels are looking at a huge number of people coming in at the top and then slowly working their numbers all the way down until you get them to the point where you can offer them the big ticket item. And if you were to stop doing the large numbers but took smaller numbers and super serve them, is that not a more effective way of marketing your product, your brand?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. You need to have a niche. You need to really understand who that ideal client is going to be for your product or service. Now, I sell business coaching, so I'm looking very specifically at certain people, and I wouldn't just throw anyone into the top of a funnel. I'd be as specific as we can possibly be with the search capabilities we've got, and we would aim to minimise the number of people that have to go in the top to get one out at the bottom. And yes, you could spend time talking to people and making those contacts really really good. But you've always got this time versus reward issue to contend with, because time is, of course, your most valuable asset, and there's only so many hours in a day to work through.
Angus has come back actually, and I'd like to see if you agree with Angus. Is he's obviously going to be involved on this program. He's not going to go away. He's got lots of questions, and he's also a man of lines and statements. Systems build relationships, and sadly, most business owners have systems that flush those leads away. I actually, that is really, really true, isn't it? Because the systems are put in there, and then we do nothing with them. Do you agree with that statement?
Yes, I think you need to have a system that is going to enhance what you're doing, that's going to build that strong relationship, that rapport, and is going to, yes, there's going to be some people that aren't ready to buy now, but you still need to keep in touch with them. You still need to build that relationship, but it needs to be done using automation and using systems that are not going to take up your time. You want to spend your time working with the people that are going to give you the best return for your time. If you spend time, and I'm sure we've all done this, where you can spend so much time having talks with people that are never going to become customers, and therefore you limit what is possible. So I know this from my own experience. I've wasted so much time in the past. I'll give you an example. When I was in the UK, I used to run sales training courses in the UK, and so I would run public training courses, and I aimed to fill 15 places on each one, and run 3 in a week. And the way in which I would do my marketing, because this was before social media, is I used to send out faxes. So I started sending out faxes, and to start with, they weren't working. So I sent out more and more and more because I wanted to find out at what point did they start working. So I started sending it, and I had to send out hundreds of faxes before one would get a booking on a training course. So then I thought, okay, how can I automate this? Because obviously I don't want to spend my time posting bits of paper into a fax machine. So I found a company that had a complete room full of computers with modems in, and they could send out 20,000 faxes per hour. And so they started, they'd get me the list, I'd find the people I wanted to send them to, and I'd send these faxes out. And I then got to the point where I could say it cost me £30 in faxes going out to get a £300 client booking. So I'd normally aim for a 10-to-1 ratio. And interestingly, I still do. That's my sort of goal, 10-to-1. A tenth of the value that I'm getting back is the cost of the...
Are you still using faxes, though?
I don't use faxes now, no. That's what I'm saying. Using social media now. But it wasn't available then. So faxing worked for me. But the interesting thing is it's interesting what people would say, because I would put in the fact, every little detail they needed about the training course. And people would phone up and they would say, have you got something you could send me? And I used to send out brochures, and people used them as a reason not to buy. So in the end, I changed my approach and created a different system. So this time they would phone up and I would say, when they said, have you got anything you could send me? I'd say, look, I'm sorry, I'm out of brochures at the moment. What was it you wanted to know? And they'd say, which hotel is it in? So I'd tell them. And then they would say, so would it be suitable for someone that's new to sales? So I'd answer their question. And they'll say, is there anything else you wanted to know?
So you'd actually use it as a way to start the conversation and to get to their pain points.
And then just get them to book. And then I'd say, okay, so was it just yourself you wanted to book, or anyone else?
But you know what's interesting about that is that the fact that you're creating a relationship with your client, and it's something that everybody that comes on the program will always talk about. And I think a lot of people who market these days are hoping that they can go to social media, that they can use Facebook ads, they can do all of that, but never, ever, ever have to talk to the actual prospect, because they're hoping it'll all happen just automatically online. Is that a pipe dream, do you think?
There's a point at which you have got to speak to people. And if you think you can get away with never speaking to people, well, unless you're selling a very, very low value product that people know what it is and they can just buy it. But if you're certainly selling a high value product, at some point you're going to have to speak to people. The question is, at what point in the funnel do you need to do that? So for me, what I would do is I would take someone who's coming from, say, Facebook, and now what I would do is put them into a webinar. And I've tested doing live webinars and automated webinars. And so I would now put them into an automated webinar. So it allows me to show that I know what I'm talking about, to give them real value, and to start building that relationship and getting them to the point where they can see that I could help them. And I could put a 40-minute webinar together, and you can cover a lot of information in 40 minutes. I can show that I understand them, that I can help them, I can give them valuable information, I can leave them wanting more. And then comes the point at which we would then start to get them into a conversation, if they're the right fit and if they want to.
So at the end of that webinar, do you offer them a product? Do you offer them, because it just seems to be the way at the moment, doesn't it? There are a lot of webinars that are content free, last an hour, and at the end they'll offer you a big deal. And then there are webinars like you're talking about that maybe last an hour, give loads and loads of content, give it away effectively, and then at the end do you offer a package or a deal to the client? Is that a time to say, look, if you're interested in this, do you want it?
So what we would do then is say to them, we have a program which is where we'll show you and work with you to put this into practice. And so if that's something that you think might be of interest, let's have a chat and let's have a look at what your business is about and whether it's something that we feel is a fit, and then we can go from there. So we would first of all book in just a 15-minute call with them just to see if there's a fit, because then it's a short call. We're not spending hours just chatting for the sake of it. And really in that call, what we're looking to achieve is to look at where their pain points are, what the outcome is that they want if we were to work together. We want to see if they're serious, whether they want to do it now, or is it something that's just an idea that they might entertain further down the track. And I suppose more importantly, do they have the ability to pay? And if they tick all of those boxes, then we would move them into a second tier, which is a longer call. Now, one thing that we would do is, and I think this is really important, is setting the right expectations. So when we start out, we would say to them in this call, this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to have a quick call, and we'll see if and how I may be able to help you, and if I can, I'll tell you at the end, and how that might look. So it's all about setting out the expectations at the start. It's a quick call. It's not taking up a lot of anyone's time, and it allows us to see if there's a good fit or not. And we're upfront about that.
Okay, another question. In fact, a comment, actually. This is from a man that I think we both know, James Mendel Brown. He says, automating the lead qualification process allows us to nurture prospects who will become clients. It is about that nurture process, just what you've been talking about there, isn't it? And that's what makes it so important. Someone who we're going to hear from in just a few moments, but you'll never guess who it is. Angus uses postcards. Have you ever, you used fax earlier on, so it's actually something that is physical that arrives at the other end. So Angus, in his marketing, he uses postcards that he sends out. So there is something that is tangible and can be touched, that the client can actually feel and see, and invariably doesn't throw away. What's your thought on those?
I've seen postcard marketing being used quite a bit in the past. I've never tried it myself, but I did use direct mail, which came through the post for quite a while as well. Because I don't know if you know, but in the UK, I can't remember which year it was, but right in the middle of when I was doing my fax broadcasting, the UK brought in a law called the Fax Preference Service. And essentially, it meant that you weren't allowed to send faxes to people if they had registered not to receive them. And a lot of people registered not to receive them. Mm-hmm. And so suddenly my market shrank massively, and there just wasn't enough people to send to. So I had to find an alternative. And so the alternative was to do very, very precise direct mail marketing, and it worked very well. And interestingly, with that very, very highly targeted message to targeted people, I was getting the same cost of customer, albeit the leads were much more expensive because I was having to post them, but I was getting the same cost of customer because I was getting much higher conversion rate. So I think definitely postcards could work, and I think now people are so used to having stuff whizzing into their inboxes and email and things like that. But I think if they get the opportunity to have something through the post, it's more likely to be read. I
think what you've got to do is differentiate the offer that you've got, isn't it? You've got to do something that's a little bit different at the moment. Keith, I'm going to give you the opportunity to have a slurp of tea or maybe just sort of relax for a moment. And we've still got so much to talk about. I'd be intrigued to know some of the tools that you use as well in your marketing, and whether they're important or not, whether the tools you actually use, because there are so many out there, and I think a lot of people get confused when it gets to the stage of deciding what tools they're going to use to maybe automate their funnels and whatever. So we'll talk about that in a few moments' time. Don't you dare go away. You're watching Business Connections Live. Great to have your company as always. And we're live at the moment. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Go onto the social media platforms that we're broadcasting on at the moment and leave your question there for Keith. If there's any way that he can help you today, then he will for free. And we'll also give all the details of his website at the end of the program as well. You're watching Business Connections Live. Let's go back a couple of weeks. We had Angus Grady and Steve Mills on the program, and they were giving us some really good advice on how to up your social media marketing when it comes to the likes of LinkedIn and Facebook as well. Great show. If you missed the show, you can go to the website and to check that out, along with over 400 hours of other programs. But just to give you a reminder, the key takeaways from that program, here's Steve Mills and Angus Grady.
Steve Mills. My company is called Crofton. My website is stevemills.co. The big takeaways, I'd say, from the hour are, I think, just to take action. You know, even if you're not perfect, even if you don't know, in detail how to do everything on LinkedIn, just start doing stuff. That's how I learn. I'd say my level on LinkedIn is pretty high. I probably know more than most on LinkedIn. I've been teaching how to use LinkedIn for many years, but I'm pretty much self-taught. I just got on there, had a looked around, found stuff, and keep very much up to date with it. So, the one thing I can tell you about LinkedIn and social media in general is if you use it, it works. And if you're one of the people who say, well, I'm on LinkedIn, but I don't do very much, or I'm on Facebook, but I don't really understand how to use it, then that is costing you money. And I really hope that changes as a result of today.
Well, first of all, who am I? I'm Angus Grady, known as the LinkedIn Unlocker, and I work with business owners to magnetise their profiles so they attract the best and repel the rest. And I think the key thing from today is to make sure that you carry on the engagement process. I don't call it follow-up, I call it follow-on. Follow-up is like chucking something up in the air. It goes up, it comes down. Follow-on, there's a process. You phone people, you postcard them, you carry on making sure that you're building that relationship, creating that curiosity to connection, to conversation, to customer. It's about making sure that we are active on LinkedIn, and that means, putting a keyword search into the search bar, even a town name, and just go and look at what's been said about your town. Also, just I want to chuck this tip in because I'm dying to, because I think people get this so wrong. There's a hidden headline on LinkedIn, and that's what you call yourself in your current experience, sort of area. When you paste in your URL of your LinkedIn, sort of URL into like a Zoom meeting, it doesn't come up with your main headline that you've crafted brilliantly. It comes up with the one that you've forgotten about, which is your experience section, where so many people just put, Angus Grady, Managing Director, Blogs and Blogs Limited. You've got to use that as your hidden headline. But the key takeaway for me today is keep getting involved, keep engagement, and keep making sure that you are talking to your sort of potential customers and your current customers.
Some really good advice there from Steve Mills and also Angus Grady as well. I love the idea about making certain that you get your headline right and putting it in the right place in LinkedIn as well. So many of us, I think, forget that. So many of us, when we write our CVs, we tend to write them from the beginning where we started. And really, people aren't that interested in where you started. They're interested in what you're doing right now. And also that constant communication, I think, is also very important as well. Listen, if you want to watch the entire program, you can go to our website, businessconnectionslive.com. If you want to get in touch with us here at Business Connections Live, it's very easy to do. All you got to do is drop us an email to this. It's studio@businessconnectionslive.com. Better still, you can pick the phone up and give us a call on 01784 256 777. You can follow our stream of consciousness. Also, we put little reminders about some of our past programs up on Facebook, Twitter, that's right, Twitter, on BCL Business TV. But the best place to go for over 400 hours of great free business advice is to go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. Go there and you can check that out. And also we've got an academy starting very shortly, which will give you training, particularly in how to present on camera, which perhaps maybe coming from me is a big deal. No, it's not. If you want to check that out, you can just go to the website at businessconnectionslive.com. My guest on today's show is Keith Banfield. He is in Brisbane at the moment. He's actually sitting in his back garden. It doesn't look like that right now because it's what's the time out there at the moment, Keith?
It is actually 10, no, what time is it now? 11:45.
It's 11:45, so it's pretty dark out there, but it seems like a nice back garden. It's lovely to have you on the program. We're talking about how to maybe automate your system, how to automate your funnel so it just gets on and does it in the background. The thing that has come over so far is it's all very well having the automation, but what is important is you do talk to your prospects, that you do talk to them and you find out more about them. And I think that's really important. This is an interesting question as well from James once again. I'll just click on the appropriate button and bring it up. There we are. He's very interested to know your views on CRMs, customer relationship managers. Do you, I mean, what are you, a Confusionsoft person? Are you an Active Campaign person? Do you just use MailChimp? What are you using for your CRM to do what you're achieving at the moment?
Well, we started off with MailChimp, but we outgrew that because it had too many limitations, and we moved to Infusionsoft, and we're using another one which is called Wishpond. So I don't know if you're aware, but there's actually a website called AppSumo, and AppSumo often have special lifetime offers on pieces of software. So Infusionsoft, Active Campaign, they can be quite expensive because the more users that you have in the system, the more the price goes up each month. And we're paying quite a lot of money for Infusionsoft. And this package called Wishpond came up on AppSumo for a lifetime license. And it was pretty much the same as we were paying for, just a once-off on Infusionsoft. So we switched to that, and it's very, very similar. But what these packages do over the sort of very basic MailChimp type stuff is they allow you to use what-if type analytics. So you could say, put a message out to someone in an email message, and it can have a link in it. And it could say, have they clicked the link? If they have, put them into this different list. And then you can have a different follow-up sequence or follow-on sequence. But it allows you to track what they're doing and then have automation that acts accordingly. So that's the big difference with these CRM systems.
So that's effectively what Infusionsoft offers, which is quite expensive, isn't it? Or Confusionsoft as it's called. We have Active Campaign. I think the problem is that when you invest into a system like that, you've actually got to truly invest your time into it to understand what it does and to get it to do what you need it to do. And I suppose as a tool, if you don't know how to use the tool, then it's of no use to you. And a lot of people will buy things like Infusionsoft, spend a fortune on it, but never ever use it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There is a learning curve if you're going to use that type of CRM. So I guess it depends on how complex your funnel is going to be. You can get very simple CRM systems if you're not going to build them into your actual marketing funnel, where you're just having, there's things like Salesforce, which are quite popular, and they're not as expensive, but they're not designed to do quite the same things with funnels.
Within the automation, do you think the linguistics that you use in the automated emails that go out, do you think that's important, or can you nearly write any old rubbish there and it'll get some form of response, or do you really have to craft each of those emails?
But the key is to craft them so they look as though you've just written to that person and you're talking to them, and you make them very conversational. You make them so that the person wants to read them. We're bombarded by emails, and a lot go into spam folders, and a lot of the time we just don't read them in the end because there's just overload. So you need to make them very very conversational, and you need to then sort of slowly take that conversational message across to the sort of business message you want, and sort of weave the two together.
How far into the process do you leave it before you pick the phone up?
Well, for me, I would pick the phone up once they've booked in that strategy call with us, and that would be at the end of the webinar. So our process, just to recap that then, is we identify who our ideal client is. We then create a campaign, probably by Facebook, but sometimes we'll use LinkedIn and mix the two together. And we would then work out how much it costs to get someone to register for the automated webinar. We can then track how much it costs to get someone to book a call with us. We can then see how many people are appropriate for what we're selling, and how many actually end up as customers. And so the metrics we're looking for are: what does it cost to get a lead? What does it cost to get a customer? Those are the two key metrics.
What do you think
once
then?
You know that,
go on, sorry. No, you
I was
first.
going to say, once you know that, you can then scale. And this is the thing. Now, I can tell you just from my own experience that typically a customer costs 10% of what we are selling. So if we are selling something for $5,000, we would expect to pay $500 to get that customer. So the mistake that a lot of people make is they sell their service or their products too cheaply, so then they haven't got enough money to actually do proper marketing to get the clients or customers in the first place. So you've got to have enough money in what you're selling to allow you to make profit and allow you to do the marketing to acquire them. And because so many people haven't got the system, they haven't got this, they rely on word of mouth, they rely on a bit of networking, and it's not scalable. And therefore, they can't then scale up on autopilot like I'm talking about. They're swapping their time for money and just picking up the business that's given to them. And that's why a lot of people have feast and famine.
Would you say that's probably the biggest mistake that coaches and service providers are doing, that they're just selling time for money, but they're not selling, another colleague of ours, they're not selling the value in what they're producing and in what they're offering?
Yeah, they haven't got proper systems. That's what's missing. They'll go along to a networking meeting. They don't know how to market themselves often, and so they are relying on word of mouth. They're relying on someone recommending them. And there's nothing wrong with that. Word of mouth is fantastic, and I'm sure we all love having referrals and things. But for me, I like to have a system where I'm deliberately driving ideal clients into my business, and that way I'm in charge of my amount of money that I'm earning. I'm in charge of how big the business is growing, and it's not relying on me because I've got automated systems that are running that lead generation process.
Do you think there's any value in the lists that sometimes are sold? Linda's asked this question. What's your opinion of companies that try to sell you lists? Maybe not the companies themselves, but what about the actual value of that list itself? Do you think they're worth doing, or is it better to do it the way we're talking here, that you spend some money on Facebook advertising, and then what you do is you get your return from that, as opposed to buying a list in and trying to shortcut the process?
Well, there's list brokers where you can buy lists of names, and they've normally been quite well researched, depending on the list broker. But having got that list, you've got to do something with it. So what are you going to do? Cold call the list? They don't know you, so it would be cold calling. Are you going to feed it into Facebook and have Facebook look up all their Facebook details and then market to them that way? But if you're going to do that, why not just use Facebook's own inbuilt list, which they offer for free, effectively? So I think the best way to do it is, if you're going to do social media marketing, use what's built into the social media platform. If you're going to do a mail shot, like we were talking about earlier, and send something through the post, then absolutely, I'd look at a list broker. I'd buy a very targeted list of who I want to target, and then I'd mail it.
We both know Steve Mills. Steve Mills is a guy that is he thinks processes all the time. He's gone through Infusionsoft and a few of the others as well, and he's very good at putting together a online automated funnel. But when it comes to doing that, do they need to be complicated, or is it all about KISS, keep it simple, stupid? Is it about keeping it as simple as process? For instance, on your one, how many different stages are there? Is it multiple stages? Are there multiple, if this happens, then do this? Have you made it complicated, or have you kept it simple?
Well, I've done quite a few of these over the years, and some of the ones we've done ended up being very complex. I think the key is to keep it as simple as possible and to actually think about, could these messages be lumped together, and are we essentially saying the same thing? But my strategy is put together a webinar, keep it a simple webinar that you've maybe got 4 or 5 key ideas in that webinar that you're sharing with someone. Make it very easy to understand. You asked me earlier about software that you might use to run these types of automated webinars. One that I've used is EverWebinar. I think that's probably one of the market leaders.
Yeah.
So EverWebinar allows you to record your webinar as a video file, like an MP4 file, and then you can load that into EverWebinar. And then it's got built-in registration pages. You can build in your own. You can tweak the templates they've got. It's got what's known as A/B split testing, so you can have 2 versions of the same page, and then you can see which one people seem to like best, or which ones convert best. And EverWebinar allows you to track where the stages are that people have reached in the process. So did they just register and then not watch it? Did they watch it for 10 minutes and then ditch the webinar? Did they watch it all the way through? So it actually allows you to track all of that and allow you to put tags in there so that you can link it to programs like ActiveCampaign and Infusionsoft.
What do you think the biggest... Sorry, continue.
So I was going to say, I love that sort of technology because it automates the process.
What do you think the biggest mistake is that people make then when it comes to doing this? Is it going down the other route and thinking it can do this, therefore I'm going to do it with it, or is it they just don't keep it simple? Is that the biggest mistake? If there was one thing you find yourself saying to people that you talk to, you don't want to be doing that, what would that be?
I think there's a few mistakes. I don't know if there's just one. I think one of the mistakes people make is not really knowing who an ideal client is, and so they're pushing marketing money in the wrong place. I think they make webinars too long, or they're not interesting, so people ditch them before they get to the end. And one thing that is really important if you want someone to keep watching your webinar is you need to keep them excited about what's coming up. So you'll start a conversation. It might be so how do you run automated webinars? What sort of software should you use? I'll be telling you a bit about that a bit later. But first, let's have a look at, and so you then leave that hanging for later. And so you're constantly doing this throughout the webinar so that people are always looking forward to what's coming up, which then keeps them watching until the end.
We used to call it in the trade teasing forward. And you've got to tease forward, I think. The danger is that there are a lot of webinars out there at the moment, and what they do is they have no content, but they are teasing forward to a result or a product or something that they're going to give at the end. So they make you sit through something that is inherently dull and boring to get to the bit at the end that goes, this is what we're offering, here is the deal. And I think you've got to be very conscious of that as well. That, in fact, and many of the inexperienced webinar presenters, they're frightened to give content away because they feel they're actually giving the crown jewels away during the webinar, and in fact there is no value then to what they've got at the end.
Well, I think the more you give away, the more people. It's almost like, well, if you're giving me this for free, what am I going to get when I pay? It adds value to a paid program. If you give nothing and you just bore them, it's like, well, I didn't enjoy that, so I'm certainly not going to buy any more of you. So it actually works in reverse. I think the key is, and if you're going to give things, obviously you can't give every single detail of every step you're going to take to do something in a 40-minute webinar. So you're giving the what you need to do predominantly, and then they're buying the how to do it as a complete program, which is broken down into small steps. So I think keep it simple, yes. I think keep it interesting, and keep teasing forward, but give valuable content as part of that process.
Go on then. Ideal length. What do you reckon it should be? Is it as long as a piece of string? Because that's 27.5 inches. I measured it once. So how long do you think it should be?
I think 40 minutes. Around
40 minutes.
Yes. And I tell people at the beginning, look, this is going to be 40 minutes long because I know you're busy. The last thing you want is for me to go on for hours. And so I've got 40 minutes. It's packed from start to finish with great content. And by the end of it, you'll know how to do this and this and this and this. And so we're telling them what they will get from it. And then we're making sure that we deliver on that promise.
The other thing that I was always told in my shopping telly days was, of course, stories sell, telling stories. Nice to see that that's been endorsed by Angus Grady. Life stories and teasing kills any hope of... Oh, hang on. Life stories and teasing kills any hope of engagement. That's an interesting comment. Thank you, Angus. Stories are important, I think, because I think stories sell the sizzle. There is a tendency on LinkedIn at the moment to go what I call sad fishing. And you see this on Facebook as well, where people have got a sad backstory. And I find that a huge switch off, quite frankly. But I think teasing works. I've got to disagree with you, Angus. I think you might be wrong on that. I think you've got to tease forward all the time.
Well, I think you're right with the sad stories. You know, I used to be destitute and I was living in this one-bedroom apartment and there were rats on the floor and I couldn't afford a sandwich for my lunch. And now I'm a multi-millionaire and I've got 10 Rolls Royces. I think when you get that sort of story, which we hear a lot, it doesn't sound so authentic anymore. But I think it's okay, certainly, to say, look, I used to struggle with my marketing and I really didn't have a proper system in place. And, someone showed me how to do it right. And I started testing and measuring and using my own money. And gradually I realized that if I did this and this and this, then it started to work. I don't think there's anything wrong with admitting that you've made mistakes in the past. I think that's certainly authentic. And let's face it, we learn from our mistakes and we've all made them. But I think when you go into these like really, destitution type stories, I think it doesn't sound right at all. I think people switch off, as you say.
Yeah, there we go. Angus has come back. He's actually said too many people tell their life story as an intro and how they made it and never get to the point. That I do agree with. Too much teasing kills the engagement. I can see where he's going with that. Too much teasing kills the engagement. But I think you do have to tease forward when you're doing something to tell people what's coming. For instance, and it's the way you do it. Yes. There's the old thing about if you're doing a radio program, do you say, I'm going to tell you about a great fate that's coming up after the next record? Or do you say, I'm going to tell you where you can enjoy the best burgers you've ever enjoyed on a Saturday afternoon right after the next record? And the two, it's teasing forward, but teasing forward and using your brain to do it, I think, and a lot of people aren't very good at that. Listen, stay where you are. I've got another question that I'm going to ask you, and the question is that you've got to think about. It's the one biggest change you need to make to move from famine to feast, that one biggest change, and I need you to have the ultimate answer. Keith Banfield is my guest on today's program here on Business Connections Live. Hope you're enjoying the show. We've only got about another 5-10 minutes left to go, actually, so we were running slightly late at the beginning. If you've got a question, maybe at the last knockings of the program, then please don't hesitate. Do get onto social media right now. Type it in, let us know, and we'll see if we can do an answer for you. Now, we've been talking about everything that comes from going out there and I suppose virtual marketing. You're using online marketing. But what happens when you're sitting down in front of your client and you're having the conversation with them? Martin Sloman came on the program some while back now, but still stands the test of time when he tells us what you should be doing to prepare for that next sales meeting, that next sales call that you make when you're sitting in front of a prospect.
I'm Martin Sloman from Gold Dust Sales Training, and I'm called the Yes Man because I help people to get more agreement in their conversations, whether it be with customers or prospects. So the key takeaways that I recommend are: plan questions before you have those conversations, but don't be so rigid that you have to stick to all of those questions. Remember, it's not about us, it's about them, it's about the prospect. So always think, is the juice worth the squeeze? What's going to be the best outcome for your prospect or your customer from that conversation? And then what's going to be the best outcome for you? If you use that thought process before any interactions, it will mean that even if the previous interaction didn't go as well as you wanted it to, you're more likely to pick yourself up and start to deliver a fresh experience for that next person you're going to speak to without the residual negativity of the previous experience moving into that. And that will come across in your approach. So it's always think, is the juice worth the squeeze? Plan a few good questions, but don't be stuck to them. And to always look at it as a learning experience. So think about what you've taken from that previous call, what went well about it, and what you can use again, what you might do differently.
Some really good advice there from Martin Sloman, and I think it's well worth remembering this when you are sitting in front of the client. God gave us two of these, and one of those using that ratio. It's all about listening, I think, sometimes, and also listening to what they're saying. If you go in there, it's very easy to sometimes just, what's the expression? Throw up all over your prospect. There's all the information you need. And I think perhaps maybe we should just pull back a little bit and just listen a little bit more. I asked before we heard from Martin what the biggest thing is that people can do, the one thing they can do to change, to move from famine to feast. In your experience and in your career, what do you think it should be or could be?
I think it's simply this. You have to have a duplicatable system for generating leads and customers. And the more you can automate it, the more you can scale it. So using Facebook ads, you're effectively buying leads. Once you know how much a lead costs and how many of those you need to make a client, you can scale up your marketing to get more. If you're so that will give you the feast, because you can dial in, once you know what a client costs and what a lead costs, you simply dial in as many as you want. When you are relying just on word of mouth, and you've got a bit of business coming in here and there, and then big troughs, then that's where you have the famine. And too many people rely on word of mouth, rely on a bit of networking, a bit of referrals, because they have no proper marketing system that's duplicatable and scalable. They don't know how much a lead costs, they don't know how much a customer costs, and so they're not in control of that success.
Do you know, I think that is so true. So many people seem to, you kind of sit back and they're kind of waiting. They're nearly passive in the way that they are generating any form of leads at all. They're just waiting for it to happen around them. And you've actually got to be proactive out there. A question that does come up on a regular basis, and you don't have to answer this, you can play around with the answer. But if somebody is starting off and they're thinking to themselves, yeah, I'm going to try a bit of Facebook advertising. Is it £5? Is it £100? Is it £200? Is it £1,000? Where do you start? I mean, you said already that you know the value of your particular customers, but is that what frightens people away from doing it seriously? That the amount of money that they've told they're going to have to spend on Facebook advertising actually frightens them?
I think people are scared of their focus is in the wrong place. I think people's focus is on how much money will I lose on marketing. What their focus should be is how much does it cost me to acquire a customer. You remember when I was saying about when I did the fax broadcasting, I had to send several hundred faxes out before one became a customer. But the numbers worked out. Now, I could have easily given up after just 100 faxes and said, well, faxing doesn't work. But it did work. I just had to do more of it. So I think your focus has to be on what it costs to get a customer. Now, your question is, when someone starts out, how much should you test with? My budget's normally been around $20 a day, and I'll just test and measure on a small scale and just see which ads are working, which ones are not performing, and then we'll start to close down those ones. One of the things that you need to do with the Facebook ad is something called split testing. So you'd have several versions of an advertisement up. You change one item in that, and it may be the picture. And so you'd have the same ad multiple times, and then you'll have different pictures. And then you'll quickly see which picture people tend to gravitate towards and choose. And once you know which ones people like, then you can switch off all the other ads with the pictures that are not working. And then you might change the actual message or the headline. And you keep that one picture that's working, and then you change the headline. And you keep changing one element at a time until you've got the winning combination. Doing that on your small budget, $20 a day, until eventually you know what's working, and then you've got a realistic cost of customer, a realistic cost of lead, and then you can start to scale.
Do you find that you've accumulated a swipe file of good ideas you've seen other people do, or do you keep going back to your own swipe file of past successes and just regurgitating what's worked before in the past?
Certain things work that we've found work, and so we use them again. But interesting, things that you would think work, but then didn't. For example, I did a headline: "Are you sick and tired of not having enough profit from your business?" And Facebook rejected the ad, and it turns out that their AI picked up the word "sick" and thought I was selling some sort of health product. And so they rejected my ad, and it took quite a while before we identified exactly what the issue was for the rejection. That's why I like to use agencies, because they know how to get around the AI. They know what sort of words are likely to be picked up. But yeah, I think if you're going to use Facebook, do it on a small scale to start with, $20 a day, get it working. Because once you've got it working, and you can scale up and you can buy customers at a rate which gives you a profit, it's magic.
Do you know what? It's been a cracking hour. I've really enjoyed it, and so much has been learned in this hour. I always ask my guests to do this, to say who they are and where they're from, and to give us a summary, the key takeaways of this particular hour. Please do say who you are and where you're from, but those key takeaways, just to condense the entire hour down into 1 or 2 minutes would be fantastic. Look, the airways are all yours. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you to all the people that have been online and asking questions. So, Keith, over to you then. The key takeaways from the hour, and don't forget who you are and where you're from.
Okay, so I'm Keith Banfield, and I'm from Brisbane. My business is Business Results Club, or one of them. I've got more than one. And so the key takeaways, I would say, are if you want to alleviate the famine and have more feast, you need to have a marketing system. You need something that's scalable and duplicatable. You need to test and measure and find out what works on a small scale. I like Facebook because that's where people are addicted to looking. And if I'm going to place advertising, I want to put it where my customers are looking. And so I place ads in their news feeds. And I like to then build up that relationship using an automated system like automated webinars, and taking them from that into a strategy call where we see if there's a good fit for what I'm offering and whether they can afford it, and whether they're right to then take them into a longer call where we'd make that final sale. So the key is to have systems, and don't just rely on referrals, don't just rely on word of mouth. Because if you do that, you're not in charge of it, and it's not scalable, and that's what stops you from really dialing in the amount of business that perhaps you really want.
Absolutely brilliant. I was going to say, if you want to visit Keith's website, just tell us a little bit about the site. Nice picture of you on the front. It's a video as well. So you can go to the site, all sorts of advice there. You can see there's some freebies as well to download. In fact, if you want to download a 3-part short course on marketing, then there's going to be a link on our webpage as well. I'm sure the link is on here as well. But that's Keith's website, and it is businessresultsclub.com. Do you need the .au afterwards as well, Keith? Do you need all the Australian bits? You need all of it, do you?
Australian bits. So, businessresultsclub.com.au. And as Steve said, we've got a 3-part short course in marketing where I'm going through some of the things we talked about today. So I'm sure that will be useful for you. And we're practicing what we preach. So we're offering people an opportunity to work with us. We've got a program called Pacers, which is a complete marketing system we build with you over 90 days. And if you go to our website, you can see about that. And do enjoy the 3-part course.
Is that, there it is. There's Pacers there, in fact, isn't it? Planning, attraction, conversion, execution, refinement, and scalability. So it's all there. I mean, it looks fabulous. If you want to go to the course, or if you want to find out more about the course, or go to the website. If you want to check out all the different links that are available from this program, and also the resources as well, you can just simply go to our website at businessconnectionslive.com. Just go there, businessconnectionslive.com, and you'll find the page. It's on our home page. You'll find there is a link straight to this particular program. And don't forget, there's over 400 hours of great business advice sitting on that website that you can go to, all absolutely free. Maybe I'm just getting that hopelessly wrong. We should really be charging loads and loads of dosh for it, but we're not. So, take the opportunity while you can. Some really, really good experts there that specialize in a whole host of different disciplines. Listen, Keith, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. Really enjoyed talking to you. I'd love to do this again in the future. I know it's an uncomfortable hour for you, but can I thank you very much indeed for being involved with the program today?
My pleasure. And it's been great being on the show.
All right. Thank you very much indeed. Okay. You've said it all. If there was one last lingering thought that you would like to leave people with, what do you think it would be? See, you've said it all already, so you're really going to have to dig deep for this one. What would it be, do you think?
I think it comes back to systemizing and scaling. That's the key. It's if you think of it this way, if you wanted to. If you're hungry and you would want to be able to say, I can go into a shop and I can buy groceries to last me for the week so I'm not hungry. You wouldn't stand around in the side of the road and say, you don't know anyone that's got anything I could eat, do you? And hope that you'd get someone donate them to you or refer them to you or say, oh, there's a person up the road I think is getting rid of some food. You want to be in control of that, and you're prepared to pay money for it and swap the money for the groceries so that you're constantly eating and you're never hungry. So I'm using that as an analogy to really get across what I'm trying to say. You do the same with leads. Buy them. Don't wait for someone to give them to you.
You've got to have a process in place. Listen, it's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much. I'll let you go to bed now. Thank you very much for being with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the program. Hopefully we'll do this again in the near future. Keith, thank you very much. That's Keith Banfield there. Fantastic program. Hope you found it useful today. If you've been thinking to yourself, look, I'm really going to have to do something about it. I think the thing that's come out from this is don't be passive in the way that you're running your business. Don't be just standing there waiting for the leads to come in. It ain't going to happen. If you want to be successful, if you want to have a feast all the time, in the same way as you do with the groceries, you got to go to the supermarket, you got to pay your money, you've got to get your groceries, and that's the way it works. That's how you're going to feed yourself. Well, surely the same applies now to your business as well. You're going to have to pay a bit. You're going to have to buy something to make it the success that it truly can be. And remember, you're the one that's already got all the skills. All you've got to do is buy that, take yourself out of obscurity so that people know you're there. And the only way to do that is with the advertising, with having a proper marketing plan, and then automate it so that it just continues on its own. Listen, I hope you found today's program useful. Here in the UK, we come out of lockdown. Here I am dating the program. We come out of lockdown in a couple of days' time. Regardless of what does happen, can I just say to you, stay safe out there until we do it all again. From me, Steve Hyland, and the rest of the gang here at Business Connections Live. Have a great week, and we'll do it all again next Monday. From all the team, bye for now, and stay safe. Bye-bye.
Business Connections Live, the UK's leading online business channel.